Hey guys, and welcome back to another Mansion 4 tutorial. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create a basic quicksand system, basically anything in which the player stands on it, they're going to slowly sink into the floor. And again, this is a basic system. Today I'm not going to be going over taking damage if they're inside of it, but I can advance upon it and do that in the future if you'd like. So let me hit play and show you what I'm going to make today. So if I go up here, what I'm going to do is fall into this quicksand which I have here. You can see I'm going to slowly start falling down. Now again, I've only got the default animations on here. I can walk straight out at the end. When I'm in it, I can't jump as well. Jumping is disabled. Again, once I go in, I'm just going to slowly fall down, as you can see here. Now the reason I'm jumping is just because of that tiny little lip gap just there. That will then cause the player to start falling, meaning that it will break it a little bit. Just because I haven't got it perfectly flat, it's not going to work perfectly. Again, if we go over to this one here, as you can see, we're just slowly falling through. In this one, I actually have a gap in the bottom, so we can fall through the floor like that. Again, quite a basic system, and I'm just using starter content materials and shapes, but this is what we're going to be setting up today if this is what you're interested in, which quite a few people have requested this exact basic system which I'm making. So without further ado, let me delete the code and I'll show you how I've done it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create our quicksand blueprint. So to do that, I'm going to right click, go to blueprint class, create an actor, and just name this Quicksand BP, opening that up straight away. In the viewport, I'm going to add a component, adding a cube, like so, and I'm going to scale this up to be the size I want, which for me, I want it to be 4 by 4 by 4. So let me just actually do this here, 4 on the X, Y, and Z. Again, you can set this to whatever size you want, but that's what I want it to be for me. And again, I've got the depth on it as well, because if you're sinking into quicksand, you're going to want to make sure that you do actually have that depth for the player to fall into it. And the material, I'm also just going to set it to a starter content orange color, just the M template base orange there, just because that gives a very basic kind of low poly sand texture and material to it. Compile, save, deselect that, add a component, adding a box collision, and I'm going to scale this one up to be 6.25 on the X, Y, and Z, because with the size of the cube I have, that fits perfectly around it. As you can see here, it is a perfect line around that cube there, so that works and fits perfectly to the size I have. Obviously just scale it up to what you want. So if I were to also now drag the box onto the cube, they are now parented, so now if I scale up the cube, the box collision will scale up perfectly with it as well, which is obviously going to be great and very useful and efficient if we want to scale up at any point. So let's compile, save, and go over to the event graph here, deleting these 3 nodes. Because what we want to do in here is right click on the box collision, add event, and add on component begin overlap, right click on it again, and add event, add on component end overlap. Because this is going to be able to tell whether or not the player is inside of the quicksand. Because if they're in the box collision, they're in this cube, meaning they're in the quicksand, so they should be sinking. So if you want, you can add a little bit of a lip just so it goes over the top just a tiny bit if you wanted, but you don't need to do that if you don't want. For example, I just want to be a perfect fit like this. So I'll go back to the event graph here, and out of the other actor of both begin and end overlap, I'm going to cast to my character, which for me is the third person character. But for you, it could be third, first, or whatever you've named it. And again, this is the other actor of both begin and end overlap, as I have here. Then we're going to do the begin overlap code first, and when we begin the overlap, we're in the quicksand, so we want to make sure the player is actually sinking down, and also so they can't jump. You don't have to do the can't jump if you don't want, but I do want to do that. So this code is going to be very similar to the one which I did for my glider tutorial, if you want to go see that as well. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. So it's very similar, because the base concept of it is going to be very similar. We just want to be slowly falling, in this case, through some quicksand. So as third person character, we're going to get the character movement, scroll all the way down to the bottom to get it there. And out of the character movement, the first thing we want to do is get the velocity, which is getting the player's velocity or the current speed with direction as well. And we're going to right click the velocity, split the structure bin so we can get the X, Y, and Z. Then come out of the character movement again and set velocity, because we want to be changing how fast the player is moving when they enter into the quicksand, because we want to slow them down a bit. Because obviously the quicksand is going to be quite viscous, I believe it's the correct word, quite thick, and it's really going to slow the player down. And we're going to right click velocity and split the structure bin again. Then out of the X of the get velocity, we're going to get a float divided by a float, connecting that into the X of the set, and I'm going to be dividing this by 6. You can set this to whatever value you like, but for me in testing I found 6 is the perfect value for me, because that's just going to slow it down to a nice solid slow value. And we're going to do the same for y as well. So duplicate it, get y, goes into the divide, which goes into the set y as well. And I'm also just going to get some root nodes to make this look a little bit neater, like that. Now for the z, what we want to do is we want to just set this to an actual value, so don't divide that current speed, just set this to a static speed. For me, that's going to be minus 50. You can set that to whatever you like, but this velocity z here is the speed at which the player is going to be falling through the quicksand or sinking into it. So you can increase or decrease this to whatever you like, but for me, I think minus 50 is a good speed for sinking into quicksand. But again, change it and customize it to get whatever you like. If you think it's too fast, just increase this value, which is similar to decreasing it, essentially just get it closer to 0. So if it's going too fast, change it from minus 50 to minus 25, that way it's slower. And if it's going too slow, then you can decrease this value, so make it from minus 50 to minus 100, or anything like that. So again, because it is minus, when you're going closer to 0, you are technically increasing it, but if it makes more sense for you to just say decrease because you're getting closer to 0, then you can say that as well. Then we're going to come out the character movement again, and because I've got these root nodes, I can just come out this root node here. I'm going to set the gravity scale, like so, and I'm going to set this to a nice value of 0. So there's no gravity applying onto the player, or no more gravity, I should say. So they're still going to fall down because we've set the velocity to be falling down, but the velocity won't increase, it's not going to change. It will just be a nice value of slowly falling down at this rate and going forward and backwards at this rate if you choose to try and do that. Now again, because I also don't want the player to be able to jump, what I want to do is create a new boolean value here for the player not being able to jump. So I'm going to minimize this and open up my character blueprint, which for me is content, third person BP, blueprints, third person character. And you can see I've already got this set up here, so let me just delete that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new boolean variable, naming this can jump question mark, compiling and saving that. Then in your jump code, which should just look something like this, you've got a jump action mapping, press this jump, release this is stop jumping, hold down B, left click to get a branch, connecting that into the pressed of the jump action mapping with true going into jump. And the condition of this is going to be our can jump boolean we just made. So when can jump is true, we're going to be able to jump. When can jump is false, we're not going to be able to jump. So we also want to compile and set the default value of can jump to be true, so by default the player can actually jump in the level without having to go in and out of the quicksand to reset the value. So we'll compile, save that, and this is now the jumping setup here. So we'll close our character blueprint, and then out of the cast again, so as third person character, we're simply just going to set can jump like so. Connecting that out of the set gravity scale, and we're going to leave it as false, so unticked, so the player can't jump. And again, I'm just going to get some root nodes to make this look nice and organized like this. So that is going to set up going into the quicksand and slowly sinking into it. So when we enter the quicksand, we're going to decrease our speed and velocity to very low values and start falling downwards, lower the gravity scale, so we are then again falling down, and then we're going to set can jump to false, so we can't actually jump. And what you could do as well is maybe do the gravity scale before setting the velocity, just to make sure that this is the final velocity after disabling the gravity if you want, and actually I think I will probably do that as well. So what I'm going to do is just move the velocity all out like this, and then move the gravity scale to be in front of it, disconnecting these values like so, and then reconnecting it all up like this. And so now the reason I've done that is because again, what we're going to do is make sure the gravity scale is 0 so the velocity can't change naturally, and then we're going to manually change it. That way this is definitely going to be the final velocity of the player, so they are slowly falling down and sinking into the quicksand. So this will just help alleviate any future bugs if you do have them. Again, this will make sure that you don't have them. And then when we exit the quicksand, we want to obviously reset the values back to the default value, what they were before. So that's just basically the opposite of this. Minus doing the velocity, because we don't need to do that. That will just fix by the player moving about after exiting the quicksand. So as third person character, we're going to get the character movement once again, get character movement, and out of the character movement, we're going to set gravity scale like this, and we're going to set that back to the default value, which is going to be 1. So set the gravity scale back to 1, meaning it's all going to work perfectly normally as it should do. Then as third person character, set can jump back to true, so we're going to tick it like so. And this is the quicksand setup. So again, I've just explained this part here, slowly sinking down into the quicksand, and then when we leave it, we're simply going to readjust the gravity to normal, and then allow the player to jump again. So let's compile, save, minimize this, and place some quicksand down on our level. So go to content and just drag in the quicksand BP, and I'll put one here just so you can see how big it actually is. So again, by default, this is the size of my quicksand, so that is how far down and deep the player is going to fall into it. And I'm just going to put one down here into this little gap and hole which I've created here, and all this is just a start content window which I've increased in size and placed onto the floor. So I've now got that one set up there, and I think that'll be good, just the only one which I want to show you. So let's hit play and go test this out. If I were to walk over into it, what we should see is the player's velocity should decrease and we should slowly sink into this quicksand. So as you can see here, it's not quite working. If I were to jump, let's see, so no, that isn't working. So let's have a look. It may be just the box collision isn't quite big enough. So we shall see if we increase this box collision ever so slightly, it might work a little bit better. Whether we just do the box collision, not the cube as well. So I have to do that. Let's see if that works any better. So actually that is working, because when I go into it, I can't jump. So the problem wasn't the box collision. I think maybe just the gap in the floor possibly isn't big enough. Although actually no, there is one big step which I just remembered I forgot to do, and that is disabling the collision of the cube. So again, that's something I forgot to tell you to do. So what we need to do is obviously allow the player to sink into this cube by just turning off the collision of it. So we're going to select the cube in the Quicksand BP, change collision presets to no collision, compile save, and now this should be working perfectly for us. If we were to go over to this one, check again, we should see that we slowly sink into it like this. Again, working perfectly. The velocity has decreased how we wanted, and we're slowly sinking, and when we leave, everything works perfectly. If I were to walk into it, you can see that I can't jump as well. I'm pressing spacebar and I cannot jump while I am in the quicksand, like so. I'm going to jump in here, again we're just going to slowly fall until I come out of it, and that resets. So I think that'll be this video on setting up this very basic quicksand system. Again, this is a request which was asked by you guys, and we can obviously advance upon it a lot if we wanted to, and if you do want to see some advancements on this, let me know in the comments down below. Again, all this does is we walk into it, it's going to decrease our velocity and make sure that we slowly sink into the quicksand. Nothing more, nothing less at the moment, but it's very easy to build upon if you want to. Again, this is just a very basic code for manipulating the player's physics kind of so that they do slowly sink into the quicksand. So thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.